The clock on the kitchen wall ticked louder than usual, or maybe it was just the silence pressing down on me. I was stirring a pot of pasta, letting the steam fog my glasses, when Mark appeared in the doorway. His tie was loose, his hair still neat but not as perfectly arranged as it had been when he left that morning. He gave me a smile, quick, rehearsed, the kind of smile you might give a colleague rather than a wife. "Claire," he said, slipping his phone into his pocket, "don't wait up for me tonight. I've got a late meeting at the office. Big project deadline. Might be another long one." I nodded, spoon clattering against the pot. "Another?" I tried to keep my voice light, casual, though it came out thinner than I intended. He shrugged, already reaching for his briefcase. "You know how it is. Clients, reports, numbers, it never ends." Mark had always been ambitious, driven, even. It was one of the qualities that had drawn me to him when we met 5 years ago at a mutual friend's dinner party. He was sharp, confident, and had a way of making people feel like he was listening only to them. I'd fallen for that version of him. But lately, the man standing in front of me felt like someone else entirely. I watched him knot his tie again, too carefully for someone who was supposedly rushing back to work. "Do you want me to save you dinner?" I asked. He hesitated a fraction of a second too long. "No, don't bother. I'll probably just grab something with the team." The team. That phrase had become his shield, a vague excuse he used to cover every late night, every missed dinner, every time his phone buzzed and he slipped out of the room to take a call in hushed tones. At first, I had believed him without question. But doubt, once planted, grows roots quickly. I forced a smile. "All right. Don't work too hard." He kissed my cheek, barely a brush, almost perfunctory, then hurried out the door. The sound of his car pulling out of the driveway left me standing alone in the kitchen, the pasta boiling over, the air heavy with more than just steam. I leaned against the counter, arms folded, replaying the exchange in my mind. Mark had been distant for months now. At first, I thought it was stress from work. He had always been dedicated, even obsessive, when a project deadline loomed. But this was different. The late nights were becoming routine. The warmth between us was thinning, like fabric worn too many times. He used to send me little texts during the day, "Thinking of you, can't wait for dinner tonight." Now, my phone stayed silent. He used to come home and tell me every detail about his day, from boardroom meetings to traffic jams. Lately, he offered nothing but vague summaries. "Busy day," he'd say. "Same old." And then he'd retreat to his study, shutting the door behind him. I tried to dismiss the thoughts creeping into my head. Maybe I was imagining things. Maybe marriage just settled into a rhythm after a few years, and I was expecting too much. But then I remembered the missed anniversary dinner last month. He'd promised to be home early, even made a reservation at our favorite restaurant. At the last moment, he called, "Sorry, work emergency. Rain check." I'd eaten alone that night, staring at the empty chair across from me, trying not to feel foolish for dressing up. A small knot twisted in my stomach. Tonight felt like another thread unraveling. His excuses were too polished, too repeated, as though rehearsed. And that pause, just a heartbeat, but noticeable, before he told me not to save him dinner. I turned off the stove, letting the pasta sit untouched. My appetite had vanished. As I moved through the quiet house, I couldn't shake the sensation that Mark's absence wasn't just physical, it was emotional, creeping into every corner of our marriage. I sat on the couch, staring at the door he had just walked through, the questions circling in my mind. Was it just work? Or was it something more? I didn't know it yet, but that night would be the beginning of an unraveling I could never have prepared for. The next evening, the restlessness in me felt unbearable. Mark had left again with the same excuse, another late meeting. I had nodded, lips pressed tight, though inside the unease had started to feel like acid, burning holes through every excuse he offered. I told myself I needed air, something normal, something to distract me. So I grabbed my purse and keys, deciding to head out for coffee and a few groceries. It was a small, ordinary decision, one I had made countless times before. But I had no idea how extraordinary this night would become. The streets were crowded, headlights and neon lights painting everything in shades of motion. I drove toward the mall, the only place open late enough to let me wander and clear my head. The thought of walking through aisles of groceries, maybe picking up something sweet, and sipping a warm latte felt like a small comfort. Normalcy. Pulling into the parking lot, I slowed my car, searching for a spot. And then my eyes froze. My breath hitched, chest tightening. There it was. Mark's car. I blinked, convinced my eyes were playing tricks on me. Same model, same dark blue paint, same dent near the back bumper from when he clipped a post 2 years ago. I could recognize that car anywhere. And yet, he was supposed to be at the office. His car was supposed to be parked downtown, under fluorescent lights and the weight of paperwork. My hands trembled slightly against the steering wheel. Logic rushed in, trying to steady me. Maybe he came here for a quick errand before heading back. Maybe he needed to pick something up. It was possible, wasn't it? But the knot in my stomach told me it wasn't that simple. I parked a few rows away, far enough not to be noticed but close enough to keep my eyes locked on his car. My heart thudded painfully in my chest, every second stretching longer than the last. I argued silently with myself. What if it's just coincidence? What if I'm overreacting? Maybe lots of cars look like his. Maybe it's not even him. But no amount of self-talk could erase the dent on the bumper. This wasn't coincidence. Minutes dragged by. I tapped my fingers nervously on the steering wheel, trying to decide what to do. Part of me wanted to storm through the mall, searching until I found him and demanded an explanation. Another part of me wanted to drive away, to preserve the fragile denial that maybe my marriage wasn't cracking apart. I stayed. I couldn't leave. Then, finally, the glass doors of the mall slid open, and my world tilted. Mark walked out. I gripped the wheel harder, nails biting into my palms. He looked casual, comfortable, like a man with no secrets. His jacket was slung over one arm, his other hand holding a shopping bag. His face wasn't tired or stressed like it usually was after late meetings. No, he was smiling. Smiling in a way I hadn't seen in months. But it wasn't the smile alone that broke me. It was the woman walking beside him. She was striking, tall, elegant, dressed in a way that spoke of confidence. Her hair fell in waves down her shoulders, catching the light from the lampposts. And then I saw it, the ease between them. The way their arms brushed, the way she laughed softly at something he whispered. Mark leaned closer, his body angled toward hers, as though they existed in a world where I didn't. And when he reached out, his hand briefly touching hers, something inside me cracked wide open. Shock rushed through me, followed by disbelief so strong I almost laughed. This couldn't be real. This couldn't be my husband, the man I had built my life with, the man who told me just an hour ago that he was buried in spreadsheets and deadlines. Yet here he was, emerging from the mall with a woman who clearly wasn't just a colleague. My breath came shallow, shaky. My hands trembled in my lap. I pressed back into the seat, forcing myself lower, terrified he might glance my way and spot me. I couldn't move. I couldn't look away. Inside my head, voices battled. Maybe it's innocent. Maybe she's a client. Maybe this is business. But clients didn't hold hands in parking lots. Clients didn't make married men smile like newlyweds. I sat frozen, swallowed by a storm of confusion and betrayal. My heart screamed for answers, for confrontation, but my body stayed rooted, eyes locked on the man I thought I knew. As they walked toward his car together, their laughter drifting faintly through the night air, the last piece of denial slipped away. I wasn't imagining things. I wasn't overthinking. This was real. And it was only the beginning. From the shadow of my car, I watched them approach. The woman walked beside Mark with a grace that seemed rehearsed, like she was born for attention. Her heels clicked softly against the pavement, her posture straight, shoulders back. She was the kind of woman you couldn't help but notice, elegant, stylish, everything about her polished to perfection. Her dress clung to her in the way expensive fabric always does, flowing effortlessly with her movements. A thin gold bracelet caught the glow of the streetlights each time she lifted her hand to brush back her hair. Younger, maybe by a few years, though not a girl. No, she carried herself like someone who knew her effect on the world and had no hesitation in using it. So this was her. The woman who had what I no longer did, Mark's laughter, his attention, his warmth. I sank lower into my seat, pulse hammering in my ears. Their closeness was undeniable. Mark leaned toward her, speaking into her ear as if his words were meant for her alone. She tilted her head back and laughed, a sound that floated across the lot and stabbed at me like glass. That laugh belonged in my home, in my kitchen after a clumsy cooking mishap, not out here in the open with a stranger. And then it happened, his hand brushed against hers. Not a simple, accidental touch, but deliberate, lingering. Their fingers hooked together briefly, like magnets resisting separation. I hadn't felt that touch in months, not since before the late nights and the excuses. My chest tightened so hard it hurt to breathe. Betrayal burned hot in my stomach, but laced within it was something else, fear. Fear that I had already lost him, that this moment was the proof of everything I had tried so hard not to believe. I gripped my phone with shaking hands, the screen blinding against the dark. I lifted it carefully, angling just enough to capture them without drawing attention. Snap. Snap. Each click was silent but thunderous in my ears. Proof. Cold, undeniable proof that I wasn't paranoid, that Mark's lies weren't innocent. As the photos filled my gallery, tears blurred my vision. My husband's hand entwined with another woman's, his smile brighter than it had been in my presence for months. How could I argue with that? I pressed the phone to my chest, as though holding it closer would stop the ache tearing through me. 1,000 emotions clashed in the space of seconds. Anger so sharp I wanted to burst from the car and scream at them both. Heartbreak so deep it felt like my body couldn't contain it. And beneath it all, an icy kind of clarity. This was no misunderstanding. This wasn't business. This wasn't friendship. Mark had chosen her. I wiped my eyes roughly, forcing myself to focus. They were moving toward the entrance of the mall, casual as if the world belonged to them. My instincts told me to leave, to spare myself the torture of seeing more. But another voice, stronger and more determined, whispered back, "No. Don't turn away now. You need to know everything." I slipped out of my car quietly, pulling my jacket tight around me. Keeping my distance, I followed. My steps felt surreal, each one heavy with disbelief. Just hours ago, I had kissed him goodbye at the door, wished him luck with his meeting. Now, I was trailing behind him like a stranger, watching his lies unfold in real time. Inside, the mall's bright lights were a stark contrast to the shadows of the parking lot. Shoppers bustled around, oblivious to the storm tearing me apart. Mark and the woman, Sophie, I would later learn, moved together seamlessly, like a couple well accustomed to sharing space. His hand occasionally brushed the small of her back, guiding her through the crowd. My stomach turned. That subtle touch used to be mine. He had done that with me 100 times, a silent gesture of possession, of intimacy. Now it belonged to her. I pulled my phone up again, pretending to scroll as I trailed them. The lens caught every detail, the way his face softened when she spoke, the easy laughter he hadn't shared with me in what felt like forever. It was all there, proof of his betrayal, proof of my broken marriage. But even as I documented it, I couldn't tear myself away. A part of me needed to see it, to burn the truth into my memory so I would never again doubt my instincts. They walked deeper into the mall, past the stores glowing with mannequins and window displays. And I followed, my heart in pieces, my resolve hardening with every step. The mall was alive with chatter, footsteps, and the clatter of trays from the food court, but I only heard one sound, Mark's laughter. It rang out ahead of me as I trailed them, careful to keep far enough back that neither of them would notice. My chest was tight, my palms damp, yet my legs carried me forward as though I had no choice in the matter. They moved past clothing stores, hand in hand now, completely unashamed. My vision tunneled. Everything else, other shoppers, music echoing from the speakers, the smell of popcorn, faded into a blur. The man who had kissed me goodbye less than 2 hours ago now walked with someone else as if I never existed. When they stopped in front of an Italian restaurant, my stomach lurched. It was one of our old favorites, a place we used to go to on anniversaries. I remembered the first time Mark had taken me there, how he raised a glass to toast to forever. Now, here he was, holding the door open for another woman. I slipped into the shadows near a pillar just outside, positioning myself so I could see through the window. From where I stood, I had a clear view of their table. My heart raced, my breath shallow, but I forced myself to stay. I needed to see, to hear, to know the truth with my own eyes and ears. Mark and the woman, her name still unknown to me, settled into a booth near the window. He leaned forward, his expression relaxed, almost glowing. He hadn't looked at me like that in months. The woman reached across the table, her manicured fingers brushing his hand. He didn't flinch, didn't pull away. Instead, he clasped her hand and squeezed it gently, as if to reassure her. Tears burned the back of my eyes, but I bit them back. I couldn't afford to break down here, in public. I had to keep watching. The waiter came, setting down menus. Their conversation was quiet, almost conspiratorial. I couldn't hear everything, but now and then, words drifted through the glass. "Can't wait till she finds out." My body stiffened, a shiver running down my spine. She. Did they mean me? Not much longer. My pulse hammered. What weren't they saying? Were they planning to leave me behind? To replace me with her completely? The vague phrases clawed at me, feeding the storm of doubt in my chest. For a moment, my instincts screamed at me to storm inside, slam my hands on their table, and demand the truth. I imagined Mark's face when he saw me, imagined the shock in his eyes, the guilt he could no longer hide. I wanted to shout, to ask how he could do this to me, to us. But another part of me, the quieter, steadier part, held me back. If I confronted him now, he'd deny it. He'd spin it into another story, another lie. Without proof, without clarity, I would only walk away looking like the jealous wife. And that thought terrified me almost as much as the betrayal itself. So I stayed hidden, clinging to the shadows, watching every gesture. Mark laughed easily, like the weight of the world had been lifted. His shoulders weren't tight with stress. His smile wasn't forced. He was happy. Just, not with me. The realization crushed me, pressing against my ribs until I could barely breathe. This wasn't just a fling. This was intimacy. Familiarity. A closeness I hadn't shared with him in far too long. I wrapped my arms around myself, rocking slightly as if to keep from unraveling. My marriage, the vows we had spoken, the promises we had made, they were being rewritten in front of my eyes, one stolen touch at a time. Still, I forced myself to stay. The pain was unbearable, but I needed more than suspicion. I needed to understand what this was, who she was, and how deep his betrayal went. As they leaned across the table, their laughter mingling like music I no longer had the right to hear, one truth settled deep in my heart. The man I had trusted most in this world had already left me. He just hadn't said it out loud yet. My nails dug crescents into my palms as I stood just outside the restaurant window, watching Mark and the woman laugh as if they were the only two people in the world. The longer I stared, the more the anger rose, hot and unrelenting. My body ached to move, to push open the glass doors and march straight to their table. I could already picture it, Mark's face draining of color, his lies crumbling in the middle of that candlelit booth. I even took a step forward, heart pounding, legs trembling with the adrenaline that screamed do it now. Every fiber of me wanted the truth ripped out into the open. Why should I suffer silently in the shadows while he paraded his betrayal under bright lights and strangers' eyes? But just as my hand twitched toward the door, reason yanked me back. If I confronted him here, what would I have? Suspicion. A handful of overheard phrases. A few blurry photos. He would twist it, turn the blame on me, call me paranoid, jealous, insecure. I knew Mark, he had a way of spinning words until the truth bent to his side. I froze, my breath ragged, fighting the urge to explode. I needed more than raw emotion, I needed undeniable proof. Cold, hard facts that even he couldn't talk his way around. That was the only way I would walk away with clarity instead of shame. Just then, my phone buzzed in my pocket. The vibration startled me, and I fumbled to pull it out, shielding the screen from the glare of the lights. A new message lit up from Mark. "Sorry, I'll be late again tonight. Don't wait up." The words blurred for a moment as my stomach plummeted. He had sent that text while sitting not 5 feet away, across from another woman, his hand still resting lightly on hers. He was lying to my face in real time, as if I were invisible, as if the life we had built together was a joke he no longer cared to keep up. The betrayal hit like a physical blow. My knees weakened, and I pressed my back against the cold pillar, clutching the phone like it might keep me upright. My husband, the man who once swore he couldn't imagine life without me, was crafting lies while sharing wine with someone else. Tears welled in my eyes, but I blinked them back furiously. Not here. Not now. He didn't deserve to see me broken. I slipped my phone back into my purse and forced myself to step away from the window. My shoes clicked softly against the tile floor as I walked back toward the parking lot, each step fueled not by despair but by a new determination. If Mark thought he could live a double life undetected, he was wrong. I wouldn't storm into that restaurant. I wouldn't scream or beg or let him dismiss me as paranoid. No. I would wait, I would watch, and I would uncover every piece of the truth he thought he had hidden. As I reached my car and slid into the driver's seat, the tears finally came, hot and silent. But behind them, something harder took shape. Resolve. Tonight, I had seen enough to know the truth wasn't far. And when I found it, there would be no turning back. The drive home from the mall was a blur of taillights and rain streaks against my windshield. My hands gripped the steering wheel so tightly that my knuckles ached, but I barely noticed. Mark's text still burned in my mind, his brazen lie typed out with one hand while the other held hers. By the time I pulled into our driveway, something inside me had shifted. No more guessing. No more giving him the benefit of the doubt. If Mark was living another life, I was going to uncover every piece of it. That night, after making sure the house was dark and silent, I opened my laptop at the kitchen table. My heart pounded with a mixture of guilt and fury as I logged into our shared credit card account. We had always trusted each other with money, or at least, I had trusted him. Now, as the list of transactions loaded, my breath caught. There it was. A string of charges that made no sense. A luxury jewelry store downtown, over $2,000. A boutique I had never shopped at. A high-end restaurant receipt on a night he'd claimed to be stuck in the office. My stomach turned with each new discovery. None of these purchases had been for me. I hadn't received jewelry, or designer clothes, or any of the fine dining that these bills so clearly documented. The truth was there in black and white, he was spending money on someone else. I pressed a hand against my mouth to hold back a sob. My marriage, already fragile, now had the weight of undeniable proof crushing it. The man I had once believed in, defended, and built a life with was investing not only his time but also our resources into another woman. Still, I needed more. Paper trails were powerful, but I wanted the kind of evidence that would silence him if he tried to spin more lies. And for that, I needed help. The next morning, while Mark showered before another long day at work, I quietly jotted down the number of a private investigator I found online. Discreet, professional, specializing in marital cases, the words promised the kind of clarity I couldn't find on my own. My hand shook as I pressed call, whispering into the phone as though the walls themselves might betray me. I need someone to follow my husband, I said, the words tasting like acid. I think he's having an affair. The investigator's voice was calm, almost clinical. He assured me it was more common than I might think, that he would handle everything with complete confidentiality. We set the arrangements quickly. By the time I hung up, my hands were trembling, but a strange steadiness had settled in my chest. The following days were torture. Each evening Mark walked through the door with excuses as polished as his pressed shirts. The office is insane right now. The team needed me late again. I'll make it up to you this weekend. His lies rolled off his tongue so smoothly that if I hadn't seen the truth with my own eyes, I might still have believed him. But I no longer listened with my heart. I was listening with suspicion, with quiet calculation. Every vague explanation, every late night, every time he slipped outside to take a call in the driveway, it all piled onto the growing case against him. My world felt like it was caving in. Each revelation chipped away at the foundation of the life we had built together. Yet in that crumbling, a strange clarity emerged. The man I had once trusted completely was now a stranger, and the only way forward was to uncover the full extent of his betrayal. The call came on a Tuesday afternoon. I had been sitting at the kitchen table, pretending to flip through a magazine, though my eyes hadn't focused on a single page. My phone vibrated, the investigator's number flashing on the screen. My heart lurched into my throat as I answered, bracing myself for what I thought I was ready to hear. Mrs. Bennet, his voice was steady, professional. I have updates regarding your husband. For a moment, all I could hear was the hum of the refrigerator and the pounding of my own heartbeat. Tell me, I whispered. He cleared his throat gently. We've been tracking him for the past week. He's been meeting the same woman, Sophie, at various locations. Cafes, shopping malls, and hotels. The meetings are frequent, intimate. It's clear this is not a one-time affair. Though I had suspected it, hearing the words confirmed was like being punched in the chest. My throat tightened as I gripped the phone harder. Hotels? I asked, though I already knew the answer. Yes, he said softly. Multiple times. They spend hours together, often during the evenings when he's supposedly at work. They're affectionate in public. There's no attempt to hide it from anyone except you. Tears stung my eyes, blurring the world around me. My worst fear had been validated. My husband, the man I had loved and trusted, was living a double life. But the investigator wasn't finished. There's something else, he continued, his tone more cautious now. Yesterday, I overheard part of their conversation. Sophie mentioned an appointment. A doctor's visit. It appears she's pregnant. The words dropped like a bomb, shattering what little composure I had left. Pregnant. My husband's mistress was carrying his child. The phone nearly slipped from my hand. I clutched it desperately as sobs erupted from my chest, raw and uncontrollable. The walls of the kitchen seemed to close in, suffocating me with the enormity of the betrayal. Not only was Mark unfaithful, he was starting a family with another woman. Mrs. Bennet, the investigator said quietly, I know this is difficult. I can provide photo evidence if you'd like to see for yourself. I recommend you prepare for what comes next. I ended the call as quickly as politeness allowed and collapsed into a chair, burying my face in my hands. My entire body trembled. How could he do this to me? To us? We had talked about children, late-night whispers about names, dreams of a nursery, plans for someday. Yet instead of sharing that dream with me, he had given it to someone else. Humiliation burned hotter than anger. Had everyone known but me? Did his colleagues snicker behind my back, knowing that working late really meant playing house with another woman? The image of Sophie, young, elegant, stylish, swelled in my mind. She wasn't just his fling. She was the replacement, the one he had chosen to give everything I had longed for. I stumbled to the bathroom and stared at my reflection. My eyes were swollen, red-rimmed, my skin pale, almost ghost-like. The woman staring back looked broken. Questions swirled relentlessly. Should I confront him tonight? Throw the evidence in his face? Or should I slip away quietly, leaving him to his new life without me? The thought of walking away without a word was tempting, a clean break that would spare me the agony of his excuses. But another part of me screamed for justice, for truth. For him to see me not as the naive wife he could lie to, but as the woman who had uncovered every secret he thought he could hide. I pressed a hand to my abdomen, empty and aching. He had stolen not just my trust but the future we had dreamed of. And now, Sophie was carrying it instead. That night, lying in our bed beside the man who still smelled faintly of another woman, I felt an icy resolve hardening within me. Whether I exposed him or walked away, one thing was certain, my marriage was no longer a sanctuary. It was a battlefield, and I was no longer willing to play the silent victim. The kitchen smelled faintly of coffee and lemon detergent when Mark walked in that evening. He loosened his tie, dropped his keys into the bowl by the door, and greeted me with the same tired smile he always wore. To anyone else, he looked like a man exhausted from long hours at work. But I knew better now. I forced a calm expression, hiding the storm that churned inside me. Long day? I asked, careful to keep my tone neutral. He sighed, running a hand through his hair. You wouldn't believe it. Endless meetings. I barely had time to eat. My heart thumped. There it was, another lie sliding effortlessly from his lips. I tilted my head, feigning curiosity. Oh, what did you grab for dinner? For a split second, his eyes darted away before he answered. Just a sandwich at the office. Nothing special. I swallowed hard, masking the bitter taste of knowing the truth. He hadn't eaten a sandwich in an office. He'd been at a restaurant, laughing with Sophie, their heads bent close together. I remembered the way her hand brushed his, the glow in his face he hadn't shown me in months. Sandwiches again. I forced a small laugh. You'll get tired of those one day. He chuckled weakly, but I saw the tension ripple across his shoulders. He was cautious, almost too cautious, as though he sensed the invisible net I was weaving around him. The rest of the evening was a dance of silence and half-truths. He sat on the couch scrolling through his phone while I prepared tea, my eyes flicking toward him, watching. Every buzz of his phone made him shift uncomfortably. When I walked past, he tilted the screen away from me, pretending to adjust his grip. "Work emails?" I asked casually. "Yeah," he said quickly. Too quickly. His voice carried that edge of defensiveness he never used before. I nodded but said nothing, letting the silence stretch between us like a taut rope. The house felt different now, not like a home but a battlefield disguised by furniture and family photos. Every smile, every question, every touch was a weapon or a shield. Later, while we sat at the dinner table, I asked another carefully crafted question. "So, who was at the meeting today? Anyone new?" He paused mid-bite. "Just the usual team. Nothing worth mentioning." I knew that was another lie. He hadn't been in a boardroom, he'd been in a cafe, holding Sophie's hand, whispering words I was never meant to hear. I studied his face as he spoke, the way his eyes blinked more often, the faint crease forming between his brows. He was unraveling slowly, though he tried to mask it behind forced nonchalance. Inside, I felt a mixture of pain and cold determination. Every false word he spoke only fueled the quiet resolve building in me. I would not explode, not yet. Confrontation too soon would give him room to spin more lies, to bury me under excuses and apologies I couldn't bear to hear. No, I needed to be precise, strategic. "Mark," I said softly after a long silence, "we don't talk much these days." His fork clattered slightly against his plate. He cleared his throat. "We've both been busy, that's all." I held his gaze, searching for even a flicker of guilt. His eyes, once so easy to read, now felt like locked doors. But the tremor in his voice gave him away. He knew I was watching him more closely now. We finished dinner in uneasy quiet, our words few, our minds elsewhere. The distance between us stretched wider than ever, though only inches separated us at the table. That night, lying beside him in bed, I stared into the darkness, listening to his even breathing. My heart no longer raced with shock, it pulsed with resolve. The web of lies he had spun was tightening, and soon, I would pull hard enough to trap him in it. I wasn't ready to confront him yet. But the moment was coming, and when it did, he wouldn't be able to talk his way out. The dining table was set with quiet elegance, candles flickering, soft music playing, plates arranged neatly as if it were any ordinary evening. But beneath the surface, tonight was anything but ordinary. My hands trembled as I placed the final item on the table, a slim manila envelope, resting like a silent bomb between the silverware. When Mark walked through the door, his face lit up with surprise. "Wow, dinner. What's the occasion?" He shrugged off his jacket and smiled, though it didn't quite reach his eyes. "Just us," I said softly. "It's been a while since we've had time together." He kissed my cheek distractedly and sat down, glancing at the food, at the wine poured into our glasses. He didn't notice the envelope at first. For a few minutes, I let the silence stretch, watching him eat, every movement rehearsed and calm on my part, though my heart thundered beneath my ribs. Then I slid the envelope toward him. "Open it." His fork froze midway to his lips. "What's this?" "Proof," I whispered, my voice sharper than I intended. "Open it, Mark." Slowly, with hands that weren't as steady as before, he unfastened the clasp and pulled out the photographs. His expression changed in an instant. The mask he wore every day, the mask of the hard-working, faithful husband, slipped right off his face. His lips parted, eyes darting between me and the images of him and Sophie, walking close, holding hands, laughing in restaurants, entering hotels. "Claire," his voice cracked. It's not what you think." The words hit me like a cruel joke. I let out a sharp, bitter laugh. "Not what I think. You're holding hands with her. You're with her in places you told me you were working late. Do you really think I'm that blind?" He shoved the photos back into the envelope, as though burying them would erase the truth. "She's just a colleague. We." "Don't you dare," I snapped, my voice cutting through the air. "Don't you dare lie to me again." His eyes flickered, desperate, searching for an excuse, a lifeline. I was helping her with personal issues. She's been going through things. That's all. My chest ached, but I kept my gaze steady. Helping her? At hotels? With jewelry you bought on our credit card? Don't insult me, Mark. The silence that followed was heavier than any argument. He looked away, his jaw tight, his hands clenching into fists against the table. He didn't speak, because there was nothing left to say. The truth was sprawled across the photographs between us. I wanted you to be honest with me, I said quietly, though my voice trembled. But you chose lies. Over and over. Mark finally raised his eyes, but the guilt there only deepened the wound. For the first time, I saw him not as my husband, but as a stranger who had betrayed everything we built. The dinner sat untouched, the candles burning lower, the silence screaming louder than any confession could. The truth was out. And nothing would ever be the same. For a long moment after the photographs lay exposed on the table, the only sound in the room was the faint crackle of candle flames. Mark sat rigid in his chair, his jaw tight, his eyes refusing to meet mine. My pulse raced in my ears, but I forced myself to stay still, to wait. I needed to hear it from him. Finally, he exhaled, the sound heavy, defeated. Fine, he muttered, dropping his head into his hands. You want the truth. You've got it. I've been seeing Sophie. The words pierced me like glass. My throat closed, but I didn't flinch. I couldn't give him the satisfaction of seeing me break. How long? I asked, my voice barely above a whisper. Months, he admitted, his tone oddly detached, as if confessing to a minor mistake. It started, it just happened. I didn't plan it. I wanted to laugh at the absurdity. Affairs don't just happen. They are chosen, step by step, lie by lie. Still, I stayed quiet, waiting. Mark rubbed the back of his neck, finally daring to look at me. Sophie, she gets me in ways you don't. She listens, she doesn't nag, she makes me feel alive again. Alive. The word echoed in my mind, bitter and cruel. So that's what I was to him all this time? Dead weight. You don't understand, he continued quickly, as if the silence unnerved him. Work has been stressful, I've been under pressure. When I come home, you're always asking questions, worrying, doubting me. Sophie doesn't do that. She believes in me. She makes things easy. Each word was another blade, twisting deeper. He was painting his betrayal as my fault, as if I had driven him into another woman's arms. So you lied to me, I said slowly, steadying my breath. Because I made things hard. He grimaced, his eyes flashing with defensiveness. I didn't mean for it to go this far. I still care about you, Claire. But Sophie, she's different. She makes me feel like myself again. My chest ached, but I forced my face to remain unreadable. Inside, a storm raged, rage, sorrow, disbelief, but beneath it all, something else stirred, clarity. I finally spoke, my voice calm but sharp as steel. You've been living two lives, Mark. One with me, built on lies. And one with her, built on stolen time. You can dress it up with excuses, but the truth is simple, you chose betrayal. He opened his mouth, perhaps to protest, but I raised a hand to silence him. I couldn't bear another word of justification, another twisted excuse to soften the reality of what he had done. For the first time, I saw him without the veil of love blurring my vision. Not as my husband, not as the man I once trusted, but as someone who had traded loyalty for selfish desire. And as painful as it was, my resolve hardened. He might have shattered my heart, but he would not shatter me. The double life was revealed. And now, the real battle would begin. The silence between us stretched thin, heavy with unspoken words. I thought Mark had said it all, but then he shifted uncomfortably, his hands clasped tightly together. His gaze darted away from mine, almost childlike, as though he was bracing himself for the final blow. There's something else you need to know, he murmured. My chest tightened. What now? Mark inhaled sharply, his voice low, almost ashamed. Sophie, she's pregnant. The words crashed over me like a tidal wave. My breath caught in my throat, my vision blurred, and for a moment I couldn't move. Pregnant. The one thing I had once dreamed of sharing with him, the milestone I thought we'd celebrate together, he had given to her. My stomach twisted, a mixture of rage and despair clawing at me. "You're telling me," I said slowly, my voice trembling, "that while you were lying to me, sneaking around behind my back, you were also starting a family with her?" Mark winced. "I didn't mean for it to happen this way. But maybe it's a sign. Maybe it's time for me to start over. With her." The room seemed to spin. He wasn't just admitting to betrayal, he was openly considering walking away from our marriage, from me, to build a new life with Sophie. A hollow ache spread through my chest, but beneath the crushing pain, something unexpected stirred: clarity. Liberation. I stared at him, really stared, and for the first time, I didn't see the man I had loved for years. I saw a coward. A man who had traded vows and loyalty for fleeting desire. A man too weak to own his mistakes without shifting the blame. Tears burned my eyes, but I refused to let them fall. "Then go," I whispered. "If that's what you want, go. But don't you dare think you've broken me." Mark blinked, startled by the steel in my tone. He had expected me to beg, to crumble, to fight for him. But he didn't realize, his final betrayal had done the opposite. It had freed me. Because in that moment, I knew one truth with absolute certainty: I deserved better. I didn't scream. I didn't beg. I didn't even shed a tear in front of him. Mark's confession might have broken my heart, but it didn't break me. Instead, I let silence be my armor. In the days that followed, I moved carefully, quietly taking back the power he thought he'd stolen from me. While Mark continued weaving lies, I combed through every document, every email, every bank statement. Credit cards, joint accounts, hidden expenses, I gathered it all. Piece by piece, I built a fortress of evidence. Then, without warning, I filed for divorce. The papers were delivered to him at work, slipped into his hands in front of colleagues who had long believed in his polished image of the devoted husband. The whispers started immediately. By the end of the day, his spotless reputation was smeared with scandal. His affair wasn't just a secret anymore, it was public knowledge. I didn't stop there. Through careful connections, I made sure the photos and proof of his double life reached the right people. Meetings were cancelled. Clients pulled back. The ambitious man who once climbed corporate ladders now found the rungs crumbling beneath him. Meanwhile, Sophie's fairytale began to crack. She had imagined herself as the woman Mark would sacrifice everything for. But as the pressure mounted and his career faltered, she saw another side of him, the restless, irritable man who blamed everyone but himself. Their stolen laughs and whispered promises faded into arguments and tension. One evening, I received a message from an acquaintance who had spotted them in public. Sophie stormed out of a restaurant, leaving Mark red-faced and alone at the table. It was almost poetic. The empire of lies he built had begun to collapse from within. As for me, I walked away with more than freedom. I walked away with strength, dignity, and the knowledge that I had turned his betrayal into my liberation. My silence had been louder than any scream, my revenge sharper than any outburst. Mark thought Sophie's pregnancy would chain me in despair. Instead, it unshackled me. Because when he chose deception, I chose myself. And that choice was the sweetest revenge of all.